Welcome to the Deep Dive. We sift through the sources, pulling out the key insights just for you. Today, we're heading up to Northern California, to Humboldt County. It's famous for just stunning natural beauty, right? The huge redwood forests, that rugged coastline, a real escape. But, beneath that beautiful surface, Humboldt County has this darker side, a really chilling reputation. It's even got nicknames like Murder Mountain and the Black Hole.
Yeah, and what's really shaking when you actually look at the data is how that reputation seems, well, grounded in some numbers. The missing persons rate in Humboldt County, it's not just high, it's nearly double the average for California. It really makes you stop and think, okay, what is actually happening in this quite isolated part of the state? What are the unique things going on there?
That's exactly what we want to unpack today. Our goal here is to sort of peel back those layers of mystery around Humboldt County. We've looked at a lot of material exploring the specific factors that might contribute to people vanishing there, but also, importantly, looking at the counter-narratives, the things that add complexity to the whole story. Because this isn't just, a list of spooky stories. It's really an exploration of a unique place where people go to get off the grid sometimes. And sometimes they just don't come back. So let's really dig into this. Humboldt County, it definitely has this strong pull, doesn't it? It attracts people looking for escape or, independence, maybe even opportunity. And a huge part of that pull comes from its role as a major center for cannabis cultivation. It's right in the heart of the Emerald Triangle. That's Humboldt, Mendocino, and Trinity counties. They're all deeply connected to this industry.
Right. And this is where you start to see the connection between that industry and the high rate of disappearances. What's really fascinating or maybe troubling is how the way cannabis cultivation works there creates this specific environment of vulnerability. You have a lot of people, we call them trimmers, or talk about trim occurrences, coming from all over the country, sometimes even from other countries, looking for seasonal work on these cannabis farms, or weed firms, as they're sometimes called. It's intense work, often paid in cash, processing the harvested plants. And because it's largely off the grid, a transient workforce, often paid under the table, there's a real lack of formal accountability. So if someone just disappears, well, there are fewer official records, fewer people might notice right away, and often there's a reluctance, maybe even fear about involving the police because of the nature of the work itself. It makes people incredibly vulnerable.
Vulnerable to exploitation, danger, or just getting lost out there.
Exactly.
And the scale of this, the sheer number of missing people, it's staggering. Our sources show that, on average, 717 people per 100,000 residents go missing each year in Humboldt. Just to give you some perspective, the rate for California as a whole is around 384 per 100,000. So Humboldt's rate is almost double the state average. It has the highest per capita rate in the entire state. Are there other places like this, or is Humboldt really unique because of these factors?
That's a really good question. And what the research points to is that Humboldt is quite unique, mainly because you have this perfect storm of factors coming together. The often illegal or quasi-legal cannabis trade is a huge part of it, like we've said. But then you connect that to the bigger picture, the actual physical environment there. It just amplifies all the other risks. We're talking about incredibly rugged mountains, really dense forests, and this key detail, something like 90% of the county has no cell phone service.
90%, wow.
Yeah, so imagine you're working deep in those woods, maybe you get hurt, maybe you run into trouble, or you just get lost. You are truly cut off. That kind of extreme isolation isn't just inconvenient, it makes it so much easier for people to vanish. It makes finding them incredibly hard, getting help is difficult, and sometimes nobody even knows they're missing for quite a while. It just complicates everything, searches, investigations, the lot.
Those numbers, the isolation factor, it starts to paint a picture, but I think it's the individual stories, isn't it, that really make these statistics feel real. Let's talk about some of the people who disappeared. It makes the abstract numbers just deep, heartbreakingly personal for everyone, I think. These cases really show the loss involved. Okay, so take Jennifer Wilmer. She was just 20, from New York City. Back in 1992, she'd gone out west looking for a new start, found some work in Trinity County, which is right next door to Humboldt. Then, on September 13th, 1993, she was supposedly heading to a travel agency. She was going to pick up a ticket to fly back east, visit her family, but she never got there. The ticket was never picked up. And later on, these conflicting stories came out. Maybe she wasn't going for the ticket. Maybe she was actually heading to a cannabis farm to ask about work. Last time anyone saw her, she was hitchhiking. And then, nothing. Her family has searched for years, but there are just no solid answers.
Her story really highlights that transient element we talked about. A young person a long way from home, possibly shifting between different plans, seeing family, looking for work in this unregulated kind of scene. It creates this really fragmented picture, makes it almost impossible for investigators to pin down a clear timeline or, what was really happening. It's a classic case, sadly, of someone potentially falling through the cracks, where even something simple like checking on a travel ticket gets confusing.
Yeah, it's incredibly sad. And then there's Karen Mitchell. She was only 16. She vanished in broad daylight right from downtown Eureka back in November 1997. Just walking down the street one minute, gone the next. The police launched this huge search, scoured the area, went door to door, talked to anyone who might have been around. But nobody saw anything definitive. No clues, no trace of her ever found. It's so disturbing, the thought that someone could disappear like that from a public street with apparently no witnesses to what actually happened.
Karen's case is particularly chilling, I think, because it sort of goes against the more common narrative you hear about people vanishing way out in the remote forests. This happened right in town, which you'd think would mean more eyes, more potential witnesses. It raises a different sort of question about the risks there. Is it all tied to the off-grid work, or are there other, maybe darker things going on too, completely separate from the cannabis trade? The fact that such an intensive search turned up absolutely nothing, that's profoundly unsettling.
It really is. Or consider Christine Walters. She was 23. In November 2008, she suddenly moved out to Humboldt. Apparently, she'd met some people back in Wisconsin, where she was from, and just decided to go. Our sources described this really bizarre situation where she was released from a hospital. She'd taken some kind of hallucinogenic tea, apparently, and she was clearly disoriented. She just stumbled off into the forest wearing only pajamas and slippers. There was some talk she might have joined a sort of hippie cult or maybe some communal group out there. The weird thing is the DMV was less than a mile away. It was daytime, but she never made it there. And she's never been seen since. Her story points to maybe a different kind of vulnerability, perhaps, psychological or spiritual, made worse by the isolation.
Christine's story, it's a stark reminder that the pull of getting off the grid isn't always about jobs, is it? For some people, it's about finding community or an alternative way of life, maybe escaping personal issues. But when that search leads you into isolation, maybe combined with altered states of mind, and you lose touch with those normal safety nets, the risk of just vanishing becomes tragically high. It really highlights how the very freedom people might be looking for in Humboldt can, in a dark twist, become the thing that leads to their disappearance.
Here's another really chilling one. Danielle Bertolini. She was 23, too. She moved out there in 2013 from Maine, trying to start fresh after some personal tragedy. Then in early 2017, she just vanished, gone without a trace. It only came out later that she hitched a ride near Fortuna with a local guy named James Jones. And this is the really disturbing part. Jones was also known to be an acquaintance of Karen Mitchell, the girl who disappeared back in '97. He claimed he just dropped Danielle off near her home. But then, on March 9th, 2015, they found her skull along the Eel River. But no one's ever been charged with her murder. What actually happened is still unknown. That connection, even if it's just circumstantial, between Jones and two missing women, it adds a very, very unsettling layer.
It does, absolutely. And what's really striking when you look at all these stories together is the sheer variety of circumstances, isn't it? You go from someone running a seemingly normal errand or just walking down the street in town, like Karen Mitchell, to people who are more actively embracing that off-grid, maybe unconventional lifestyle. But in nearly every case, you see these common threads, the extreme isolation, the transient nature of at least part of the population, and this general lack of sort of formal structure. It all seems to play this silent but critical background role. And it often makes investigating these cases incredibly difficult. You might lack immediate witnesses or the usual paper trails or even reliable last known contacts. Each story, despite being unique, really underlines this deep sense of vulnerability.
These stories are absolutely haunting. And you can see why they feed those sensational headlines about Murder Mountain. But as we always try to do, we want to give you the full picture. And the reality in Humboldt County is, well, it's a lot more complicated than just those chilling stories suggest. So, if these disappearances are happening so often and the risks seem so clear, how do we square that with the bigger picture? What do the counter-arguments tell us about what's really going on?
Well, yeah, this is an important point to bring up. The sheriff's office there, and some researchers too, they actually argue that the number of missing people, or at least how it's often portrayed, might be a little bit exaggerated. Because while Humboldt does lead the state in the number of missing person reports filed, our sources also point out that the county is apparently among the best at finding people who disappear. So a lot of the adults who get reported missing, they aren't actually gone for very long. This definitely challenges that simple murder mountain narrative by adding some, important nuance to the stats.
Right, that's a really crucial distinction, and it kind of reframes how we think about what missing actually means in this particular place. There was a report from 2018 looking at adult missing person reports from 2016 specifically that gives some detail here. Out of 313 adult reports filed that year, a pretty big number, 230 people, that's about 73%, they either returned on their own or were eventually found by authorities. Of the others, 15 were arrested, 8 were declared involuntarily missing, 5 cases were withdrawn, 1 was unknown, and then you had 51 classified as other. And that other category does include cases with suspicious circumstances. So yes, the initial report numbers are high, but a large chunk are in fact resolved. That's a critical bit of info that often gets lost in the more dramatic versions of the story.
Exactly. And if we connect this back to the bigger picture, there's this significant, almost hidden challenge in resolving these cases and just keeping track of people. And it stems directly from the illegal or gray market marijuana trade. You have many people who come to Humboldt specifically to work in cannabis, and they often will not communicate with friends and family regarding their location right from the start. Their goal is to stay off-grid. Maybe for reasons related to the work, or maybe they just want to drop out of their old life. But the complication is, even when these folks do eventually go home, or maybe they move on somewhere else, often no one notifies law enforcement that they're okay, that they're no longer missing. So they can stay listed in the missing persons database, which totally skews the perception of the problem. This desire to remain off-grid, for whatever reason, makes defining missing and investigating disappearances incredibly complicated.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, what we've really uncovered is this intricate reality of Humboldt County. It's definitely a place of really stark contrasts, isn't it? You've got the incredible natural beauty, this powerful economic engine tied to the cannabis industry, but also this profound isolation and this persistent, maybe sometimes an exaggerated sense of mystery and danger. It's definitely not a simple black and white situation.
And maybe this leaves you, the listener, with an important question to think about. How do we balance that very real allure of escaping the mainstream, of getting off the grid, with the inherent risks and responsibilities that come with it? And that applies both to the individuals who choose that path and also to the communities they interact with, the ones often left dealing with the fallout when things go wrong. It's a really complex equation, especially in a place as unique and intense as Humboldt County. There aren't any easy answers.
No. Definitely not. A really thought-provoking question that kind of sticks with you after hearing all this. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating and, yes, often unsettling world of Humboldt County. We really appreciate you exploring it all with us today.